In a time when women in the United States couldn't vote, couldn't own property in their own name, and were expected to remain silent in public affairs, one woman decided to take on the entire system. Her name was Belva and Lockwood, and she didn't just fight the rules, she rewrote them. Today we're diving into the story of the woman who became the first female attorney to argue before the U.S. Supreme Court, and even ran for president decades before women had the right to vote. Belva Ann Bennett was born on October 24, 1830, in Royalton, New York, a small farming community where life was simple, hard, and governed by tradition. Her father, a farmer, believed education was wasted on girls, but Belva had other plans. Even as a child, she was known for her curiosity and determination. She once said, "I cannot remember the time when I did not long for an education." At 14, she was already teaching at the local school, earning a fraction of what her male counterparts made. That unfairness burned into her mind like a brand. After her first husband died when she was just 22, Belva refused to fade into quiet widowhood. Instead, she packed her things and went to Genesee College, one of the few institutions at the time that accepted women. She graduated with honors, becoming a teacher, principal, and later headmistress, pushing girls to dream beyond what society told them was appropriate. By the 1860s, Belva had remarried to Dr. Ezekiel Lockwood and moved to Washington, D.C. The Civil War had ended, and the air was thick with questions about freedom and equality. Belva watched men debate the rights of freed slaves and the Reconstruction Amendments, while women still had none. So she made a bold decision. She would become a lawyer. But when she applied to Columbian Law School, now George Washington University, the faculty refused to admit her. Their reason? They claimed the presence of women would distract the young men. Belva didn't accept that. She wrote directly to President Ulysses S. Grant, who also served as president of the university's Board of Trustees. Her letter was firm, fearless, and unapologetic. She demanded entry. And it worked. Sort of. The university eventually allowed her to complete her studies, but refused to give her the diploma she had earned. Without that piece of paper, she couldn't practice law. So what did Belva do? She wrote another letter to President Grant, demanding her diploma once again. Weeks later, the document was delivered to her door. At age 43, Belva Ann Lockwood officially became a lawyer. Belva's early law career was anything but easy. Male lawyers mocked her. Judges refused to hear her cases. Clients hesitated to hire a woman. Still, she pressed on, handling cases involving divorce, property, and even military pensions. But her eyes were set on a bigger goal, the Supreme Court. In the 1870s, women were barred from practicing before federal courts. The law simply didn't recognize them as attorneys. So, Belva drafted her own bill, the Lockwood Bill, and spent 5 years lobbying Congress to pass it. In 1879, President Rutherford Hayes finally signed it into law, allowing qualified women to argue cases before the highest court in the land. Soon after, Belva became the first woman admitted to the U.S. Supreme Court bar. Her first case before the court came in 1880. Imagine that moment. A woman standing alone in a courtroom filled with powerful men, none of whom believed she should even be there. But Belva stood tall, confident, and prepared. She argued her case clearly and calmly, and although she didn't win that particular appeal, history had already been made. She later remarked, "The glory of each generation is to make its own precedents." And she did just that. But Belva Ann Lockwood wasn't done breaking barriers. In 1884, she made an announcement that shocked the nation. She was running for President of the United States. Her platform included equal rights for women, civil service reform, international arbitration, and justice for Native Americans. She represented the National Equal Rights Party, a third party formed by suffragists who were tired of waiting for progress. Her opponents mocked her. Newspapers called her the lady candidate. One even joked that she should be at home tending the children. Her response? "I cannot vote, but I can be voted for." Though she received only around 4,000 votes, her campaign was symbolic, a declaration that women belonged in politics. She ran again in 1888,
continuing to make headlines and push the boundaries of what was possible for women in public life. In her later years, Belva continued to practice law, advocate for peace, and mentor young women. She argued more than 100 cases before the Supreme Court, and even won compensation for the Cherokee Nation, securing millions of dollars in settlements that had been delayed for decades. She was an early supporter of the League of Nations, long before the idea of international cooperation became mainstream. When women finally gained the right to vote in 1920, Belva was 90 years old. She had lived long enough to see a dream that once seemed impossible become reality. 2 years later, in 1922, Belva Ann Lockwood passed away in Washington, D.C. Her tombstone bears a simple inscription, Belva A. Lockwood, Attorney at Law. But her true legacy is much larger. She opened the doors of justice for generations of women after her. Belva Ann Lockwood once said, "If the world were not so ready to laugh at a woman who thinks, we might have more women thinking." From classrooms to courtrooms to the campaign trail, she proved that courage isn't about winning every battle. It's about refusing to stop fighting. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story of a trailblazer who changed history, hit like, subscribe, and share this video, because stories like Belva Ann Lockwood's deserve to be remembered.